Welcome back. It's been such a busy hurricane season. The most damaging storm may be the one that you paid the least attention to until now, the Equifax data breach, which one analyst at the Barracuda Networks described as like a Category 5 hurricane in the cyber world. The analyst going on to say the lasting impacts of the breach will go on for years. 145 million Americans, 44% of the U.S. population, could be impacted by their Social Security numbers, birth dates, driver's licenses, and credit card information being exposed. Joining us to talk about what this means are Jeff Birnbach, Managing Director of Sarasota-based silent and internationally recognized cybersecurity firm, Shane Hartman, a cybersecurity specialist and adjunct professor at USF Sarasota Manatee, and Jerry Zivick, our own ABC7 consumer watchdog. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. And Jeff and Shane, let me start with you, because what was incredible in Haley's story was one person at one company screwing up is causing this. How does this happen in a corporate level, especially at a company like this, which has so much sensitive information?
Well, I think at this point the investigation is still somewhat ongoing. The firm they hired, Mandiant, hasn't really made public their full findings as far as I know. So a lot of pieces are still coming together. But we did see through the testimony of Mr. Smith and some other pieces that have been made public that it appears it wasn't just one individual error, but a series of small missteps that may have caused this to occur. Shane,
from what we saw there, it is somebody not getting the right notification about a patch for something that needs to be corrected. We get these things all the time at home. It seems incredible to me on a corporate level that this was missed.
Well, I'm sure there's some communication errors that had occurred throughout that, and like you said, a corporation is going to get many of these type of notifications, but it's their job to actually try to mitigate this and put the right ones in place. It doesn't mean that they will be able to apply one as soon as it comes out, but they should be proactive and start working on them as soon as they become aware of them.
Jerry, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'll ask it anyway. Are we already seeing people's information being compromised and basically becoming victims of this?
Yes, actually, just today I learned of a gentleman who somebody took out a mortgage or was trying to take out a mortgage in his name, and he called up and said, how can this happen? And he was told it was Equifax. How they actually know it's Equifax, I have no idea.
That's just incredible. Jeff, how many companies out there, you deal with these corporations, how many of them are becoming proactive in terms of protecting their networks, especially the most sensitive parts of their networks?
We're seeing companies become more proactive than we had in the past. Unfortunately, most firms are still very reactive. As I said to you earlier, many people put a burglar alarm system in after they've been robbed, not before. So companies are starting to pay attention to this. They're recognizing, even at the board level, that this is really an important element that could impact their stock value, their reputational brand, a number of different aspects that impact their valuations.
Is there any kind of law, federal or statewide, that mandates companies that basically hold your personal information have to have secure computer networks?
There are laws out there, but they're kind of a hodgepodge. They're usually dictated via the state versus something federal. For California may have something that says you need to encrypt your things, but North Carolina doesn't. So where your data lies or where that may be is one of those things that's a key component of these types of actions.
Is there any effort on the federal level to mandate that this be done nationwide for a certain category of business?
There has been some discussion. Right now there are 47 different state notification laws throughout the United States.
And Elizabeth Warren introduced some legislation. It's basically a consumer protection law for all your data. And several other senators are introducing legislation to protect us, to have some sort of responsibility on the part of the parties that are just taking our data. We're never opting in on this. This is just taken from us.
Is it getting any traction in Congress?
I think it will get some traction in Congress. I think it's something that actually might receive bipartisan support if that's possible at all.
Well, that's a novel idea.
Yes, it is.
All right, gentlemen, sit tight. We're just getting warmed up. We'll have much more on the Equifax data breach right after we check the first alert weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about the Equifax data breach, and joining us to talk about what this means to all of us are Jeff Birnbach, Managing Director of Sarasota-based Silent, an internationally recognized cybersecurity firm, Shane Hartman, a cybersecurity specialist and adjunct professor at USF Sarasota Manatee, and Jerry Zivick, our own ABC7 consumer watchdog. So again, Jeff and Shane, how did Equifax become aware that they had a breach?
Well, corporations know what, or should know what assets that they have, meaning what kind of software packages that they have, and they subscribe to news feeds or services that tell them about those type of vulnerabilities or things that are available and what they should do for them.
All right, so the government did not go to Equifax and say, you are susceptible personally to a special kind of breach.
Yeah, no, they didn't reach out to them specifically. They put out a CERT notice, is what we call it in the industry, which is just that, as Shane said, it's a news feed that says someone's identified this particular vulnerability, you should be on the lookout for this. Now, it's also interesting to note that when the government puts out a notice about a vulnerability, the bad guys take notice of it too. So now, to some extent, the clock starts. Now everybody's been put on notice that this is a vulnerability. The bad guys are going to try to exploit it, and the good guys should be trying to patch around it.
How long does that usually take?
In terms of patching? A proper patch cycle actually requires you to do some testing before you actually deploy the patch in a live environment. So in some cases it may be a matter of hours, in other cases it could be a matter of days or even weeks.
And Shane, is there an average amount of time between when a company or an organization is breached and when they detect that they've been breached?
Yeah, it can be, there's various numbers there, but it could be anywhere from 2 months to 6 months or longer, depending on the vulnerability that's been exploited. If it's something that flies underneath the radar and even they don't know about to look for it, then they're not going to discover it for a very long period of time, where other ones, scanners will eventually pick that up and let them know that they've already been.
Jerry, from what we reported, amongst the information that hackers could get on 145 million Americans are Social Security numbers, driver's license numbers, dates of birth, that kind of thing. What kind of damage can that cause?
Well, actually, I'm thinking it might be the tip of the iceberg. I just read a report today that the Michigan Attorney General has identified almost 3 million more people that were exposed in this Equifax hack. Now, I'm also curious to know what's going on with TransUnion and Experian, what they're doing. But you're going to have somebody 15, 20 years from now taking out a mortgage in your name, trying to get a car loan in your name. Just like, you know, we get up in the morning, we wash our face, we brush our teeth, we're going to have to check our credit. It's part of our daily life now.
Now, you know, what we have heard is that you get free credit reporting, you should do a credit freeze. But what are the, you know, for your average consumer who finds themselves hacked and compromised, you know, what is their legal ability to get recourse?
Okay, well, there's a potpourri of potential legal remedies here, but probably the easiest one, path of least resistance for the consumer, everybody's going to be part of a class action lawsuit that will be filed against Equifax, and there's a number of lawsuits that have been filed. You know, for you to go it alone, you have to actually prove that Equifax actually caused your damages, and that's a very tough bar to meet. So everybody will be part of a class action, and as we all know, they're not very satisfying at the end of the day and for the consumer in terms of what they get.
But I've also heard that Equifax may not be able to survive this.
Well, according to the government agencies, can fine Equifax up to $1,000 for each potential problem. So if you do the math, it would put them out of business. But historically, the settlements have been far less. Like the Target settlement was like only $13 million. So
Jerry raises an interesting point. What about the other credit reporting agencies? Do we know if they have been compromised in any way?
They have in the past, in different ways. There, in 2012, I believe Experian was, they weren't really breached so much as they allowed people to come in and mine their data, and it turned out it was a nefarious entity. But that doesn't mean that's the end of it.
And Jeff, what is the most common way that corporations and organizations are being breached these days?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things we're seeing is actually very low tech. That's what we call spear phishing, where someone is sent an email under some guise or context, and they're led to open it or open the attachment. For instance, if you're in accounting and someone sends you an email that says, I'm trying to get this bill paid, would you please help me? It's that person's job to help. So naturally they're inclined to go ahead and try to do good, and they'll end up clicking on that email and downloading malicious payload onto their network.
Now, we're all getting these days increasingly a number of emails that are obviously phishing attempts, whether it's from, you know, a bank or any kind of organization I've heard about from Dropbox. And you know, we're getting this in our personal lives and our business lives, and I'm wondering why these are even getting through both corporate and commercial and you know, web systems.
They get through because it's just like an arms race. Every time you come up with a different way to block it, they come up with a different way to get around it. They'll change the subject line, they'll make it an image, they'll turn it into a document, they'll do something to try to get around that particular element that they know you put into place, and then they get in again.
And many times, unfortunately, it is human error of somebody punching that button and returning that email. We all know what happened during the election. John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chair, hit the reply button, and boom, he was infiltrated.
It doesn't take much. And a lot of times these malicious payloads will do different things. Some will exfiltrate credentials, some will open what they call a rat or a back door. So there's a number of different things that attackers are doing to gain entry into various networks and systems.
Now, Jerry, you basically said there are a number of things that you could and should be doing right now, including the credit freeze, including filing your income taxes as soon as you get your W-2s. Is there anything else that just the normal person at home watching this right now should be doing?
Well, I'm not a security person. I have a question though. So if we all have this virus software on our computers, does that do any good for us?
You're almost laughing at that.
Yeah.
Again, it's back to the arms race type of thing. Antivirus is just one step of the equation. It's situational awareness. For corporations, it's knowing what they have inside there that could be exploited. It's a series of things. It's not antivirus is the end-all and be-all, because they're going to find a way to get past it. Otherwise you wouldn't get updates every month.
Jeff, you said that more and more companies are becoming aware of this, but they're still reactive and more than proactive. I mean, are they getting with the program here in terms of realizing that it's more cost-effective to stop this from happening if they can, rather than what could happen if they react to it?
Yeah, I think they are, and I think it's happening at senior levels. We're seeing more boards of directors starting to pay attention to these types of things. We're seeing more top-down budgets being put together that give the resources necessary in the various organizations. But at the same time, I have to say, we're seeing people become desensitized. At this point, no one's really all that concerned, really, about the Equifax breach from a day-to-day perspective, because their information has been compromised so many other places, they feel.
And we're talking about the corporate world with Equifax, but I would imagine that the vulnerability is also there in terms of, our colleges and universities and our government. And we've heard stories about whether it's the CIA or the DOD also being compromised. From that level, is there increased cyber protection?
I don't know if you'd say increased cyber protection. There's awareness in different levels. Universities tend to be more open, although I've explained before that they tend to separate them out to a certain degree. But the cybersecurity programs that we have in place, we're trying to teach those students who will become your employees in the not-so-distant future what to look for, what to be aware of, and how to actually mitigate it.
Okay, we have to take a quick break, and we'll return for final thoughts in a moment. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And Jeff, I'm going to start with you. I've seen the commercials on TV telling people find out what information of yours is on the dark web. What does that actually mean?
Well, it's difficult to do, but what they're referring to is to try to see if your information is being peddled, if it's being sold, if it's on anonymous billboard sites. That's really how some large corporations are doing their intelligence gathering to see if, in fact, they've been breached. They're trying to see if their information is out someplace it shouldn't be.
Is that effective?
It is definitely. You need to be able to do that. Not me specifically, but we've seen where other things in the dark web have been brought to light, and they've managed to shut them down.
And Jerry, so what are you telling people to do today? And are there, there are a lot of us that we won't be affected today, but that we may well be affected tomorrow. And how are you to know whether it's due to Equifax or the breaching of the target database or any other?
Well, I don't think you'll ever be able to meet a legal standard to prove that it's Equifax, Target, Home Depot, whoever's been the hack du jour. I think one of the things I think we need to do and we need to be very aware of is we need to be changing our passwords on a regular basis. We were talking about password strength in the green room. Password, I think you guys said, should be like 14 characters, 14 letters long, a character, a symbol, things like that.
The problem with that, Jerry, is that we have so many passwords that we all have to change so often. It's very hard for people to keep it straight.
I agree with you. We rail about it at home all the time. One of the things you can try and do is you can try and go to pay cash, to sort of limit yourself, have one or two charge cards. I actually, for myself, I have like different bank accounts for different things, and they're not tied together electronically ever, just to try and limit the damage if and when it ever comes.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you. But before we go, we want to hear from you about your thoughts about last week's show in Washington. Gun control. Last Sunday, 58 people were killed in Las Vegas by a madman who owned dozens of automatic weapons that appeared to be purchased legally. President Trump traveled to Las Vegas last Wednesday to meet with local government, law enforcement, and victims from the shooting. The president didn't want to discuss gun laws so close to the tragedy, but if not now, when? We went to Facebook to ask you your thoughts about this subject, and here's what some of you have to say. Tommy says, guns don't kill people. Guns cannot think. People kill people by whatever means possible, like airplanes. Or did you forget? Melanie responds, when airplanes kill people, everyone was forced to go through TSA and remove their shoes and throw out liquids. Guns have killed many more people, and nothing has been done. Joan says, for decades, we the people, legislators, reporters, citizens, have politely asked for the gun control issue to be addressed and are told time and time again, this is not the time. I am tired of being polite, and I'm now angry. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions. They're on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Jeff Birnbach is Managing Director of Sarasota-based Silent, an internationally recognized cybersecurity firm. Shane Hartman, a cybersecurity specialist and adjunct professor at USF Sarasota Manatee, and Jerry Zivick, our own ABC7 consumer watchdog.